Okay, good morning, everybody. In the next 10 minutes, I want to bring you up to speed with our initiative that's called Terms for Fair Skills. And I will do this on behalf of the people, of the members of the Terms for Fair Skills initiative. Next slide, please. Actually, what it's all about is that we think that we need a controlled vocabulary for skills in data management and stewardship. The challenge is that there is much going on in, for instance, training materials and courses. Everybody's doing data management and stewardship. Skills are being defined, but all this is not really findable, discoverable in a good and accurate manner. And actually, we need a terminology to describe them. And we think that there is not yet a well-defined community-endorsed terminology. So that is when in January 2019, we were together in Leiden at the GoTrain meeting, and we decided that working on such a terminology would be the first step working together, and we started at that time. Next slide, please. What the Terms for Fair Skills aims to do is to build a terminology for the competency, skills, and knowledge necessary to make data fair and to keep it fair. And the main use cases we foresee are written here. So it's about discovery. So we have to, in a good way, annotate, search, and evaluate all the materials, for instance, the training resources. It can help in designing, for instance, in the creation of curricula. It can help in training because trainers are looking for materials, they make materials that they want to annotate. The trainees want to find courses that are suitable for them. And the final use case is also, we call it formalization. If we have this terminology of skills, we will be able to make good job descriptions, curriculum vitae, etc. Next slide, please. So when I talk about we, you have to realize that this is a really large group. We put all the logos here, and already from the Elixir people, you saw them as authors on the slide set. Susanna, Pete, Victoria, Matthias. I think the majority of them is in the call today too. But realize that this is a large group of organizations spread over domains also. And we started with a coordination group. You see our names on the top. And there's also other people that I wanted to put a name because a lot of people have already been active in what we call the annotation groups. Next slide, please. Sorry, thanks, Andy. It's important, and I'm happy that the first speaker also used the term competency questions. So we all knew that we wanted a terminology, but then it's really important to think about clearly what you want to do with this terminology once it's there. So we call that the competency questions, and we actually set out with the use cases, and these will be central in leading, have been central and will be central in leading where we will go. So for Elixir, our current use cases are from the training platform, of course, which is my own cup of tea, as you know. We will need this to help annotate training materials in tests. We want to create learning paths for fair skills. And of course, now the Convert, it is all fits very nicely in the Convert Work Package 2 that I am leading. In the EOSC Live context, Pete and Susanna, and Pete mentioned it already in the previous talk, working on the Fair Assist tool. So this is for Elixir, the use cases that we foresee. The other use cases that are currently selected are the CoData Summer Schools, FAIR's Fair Competence Center, that's Work Package 6, and also the SSHOC, which is the Social Sciences and Humanities training materials. Next slide, please. Where are we now? We have had, after the initiation in January, then we sat down the first time in May in Paris, hosted by CoData, and in October hosted by Dance and FAIR's Fair. Because this is what you have to realize, this is a totally unfunded activity until now. Every people from all the organizations are putting in their own project funding because they think it's really important to work towards such a goal. So what we did, we, of course, we didn't want to start from scratch. We built on what is already there, and we started with reusing the FAIR4S framework. And I will come back to that in a minute, which is a framework for data stewardship. We collected use cases, I explained that already. We defined the competency questions, and we discussed, of course, the richness of the terminology. Next slide, please. Then, and that is where we are now, we created a working structure and a list of terms. We defined the terms, the definitions, the synonyms, the hierarchy, the relationship, etc. We had a large matrix, and I will show you in a minute. And by now, Pete and Jan have converted this in an OWL file, and it's now in Web Protege. And there are over 250 terms at the moment. Next slide, please. To make it a bit more concrete, I want to tell you a bit about the FAIR4S first. So people who know the EOSC pilot, and everybody knows the DCC, of course. Angus White from the DCC is actually the author of the FAIR4S framework for data stewardship competencies. And in that framework, they have competencies defined. And you see an example on the right in the table. You have 6 competencies on the individual project level, they are in the circle, and 3 on an organizational level. And it was a kind of our starting point for working on the terms for fair skills. Next slide, please. I also put this one because you may not know it, but in Elixir we have actually also been working very hard on the data stewardship roles and competencies. And this has actually been done as part of the implementation study that I led from the Elixir training platform. And I will not go into detail here, but from the beginning, Angus and I, in the terms for fair skill, we have also looked at our work. So we're really trying to bring this together in the terms for skills framework that will emerge. Next slide, please. So this is what we started out in May last year, and this is a really small snapshot. So there is a table, and you can see, for instance, in the left column A, govern and assess. That is one of the competencies of FAIR4S, and what we are aiming at is to find what we called atomic terms for certain skills, and you can see them, for instance, in the column B. In the column H, there also have to be definitions, longer definitions of the atomic terms. But the atomic terms, that is exactly what we want to go at. Then we talked about, is this project context, or is it the context of an organization? Is it the competency of an organization? We talked about if it's a skill or a knowledge or an attitude, all this kinds of stuff. And in the next slide, you will see how it looks now. So they put the whole tables in the OWL, and that is exactly the point where we are now. Next step, please. So what we also think is that terms for fair skills is very relevant for EOSC, and we have presented this in several EOSC meetings, and I think Susanna, and the last one was that Susanna presented it in Budapest at the EOSC meeting. We think that it could actually really be a good approach, and EOSC also need that. It would also be a way to put the FAIR4S concepts in action, and we also have, Angus and I are both in the EOSC working group training and skills, and there we have put forward the terms for fair skills too. Next slide, please. Our next steps is, because I said we don't have funding, so we desperately looking for it. So at the moment we have applied for EOSC Co-Creation Fund to create a proof of concept prototype in the autumn with the Elixir code data and GoFair use cases. We only asked 32 €, for 2 ontology experts, of which Pete is one, of course, and for a 3rd workshop. It is provisionally granted, so we'll know more about this week. So my final plea and invitation would be, if you're interested and think such a standardized terminology would be used for you too, please look at the pages, the links are in the presentation, approach one of us and see how you get involved in shaping this terminology. Thank you for your attention.